Warning, this is not the full English dub release of Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple. This is a review of the English dub. If you would like to check out Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple and its dub, you can check it out on Funimation and Crunchyroll for legal streaming, as well as pick up the Blu-ray from a retailer. Again, this is not the dub for Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple, but rather a review. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Oh boy, I gotta clean up the Dub Talk library again. There's a lot of weird books in here. How to waifu, how to make your goat sing the Master Keaton opening. What the hell do we even get that? This, oh, that's sticky. How to himbo. Good choice. What to do if you've become a skeleton and like Steely Dan. Okay, this is just getting weird. Alright, so I guess this is an interesting book. It says as a warning that strong language in situations that may not be suitable for all audiences, so reader's discretion is advised? Also, it says it has spoilers for all of Bungo Stray Dogs and Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple. So if you would like to be not spoiled, go back and watch those before coming to read this. And it says finally that the views and opinions expressed in this are not of the Dub Talk authors as a whole, but that of the individual. Alright, so this is cool. Looks like a... Is that a tiger boy? Is that a bondage? What the fuck is going on? Oh. Did I just get powers? Weeb beneath the moonlight, go! Let's get into this. Hello, one and all, and welcome to Dub Talk Summer at the Movies 2021. I forgot what season it is. I don't do the math. Tonight, Jet is my partner in crime or partner in detection. Say hi, Jet.
Hello.
It's time to talk about a series that I think... I've gotten to talk about this franchise before, but you haven't gotten to talk about this franchise before.
Yeah, no, I am not.
Yeah, you sadly were not on the original episode for this, but it's gonna be fun, at least for me, to kind of come back and revisit this, / have you actually talk about it for the first time, because I know you and I have opinions about this dub and the company that pays for the dubs in general. Tonight, we are here to talk about Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple. I forgot what year it came out, because I remember I was at the theater with my Ida bag, and everyone was like, holy shit, what a nerd.
I'm trying to think chronologically.
I think it's like 2018. Came out in 2018, so it's...
yeah, I was gonna say 2018 or 2019.
Oh god, this movie is 5 years old. What the fuck? It's a 5-year-old movie. No, but tonight, yeah, we are here to talk about Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple, the movie for the Bungo Stray Dogs anime franchise / mixed media franchise, I would say at this point, because you would be surprised at how much shit exists just for Bungo Stray Dogs. It is, like, actually, like, surprised at how much exists for Bungo.
Oh yeah, there is a lot now.
Yeah, there's the original manga, there is a set of light novels, which there are 8 of them. There's a spin-off manga called Bungo Stray Dogs 1, the anime, and there is a phone game. Not to mention there are multiple spin-off mangas. And even the spin-off manga got its own anime last year, or this year.
Yeah, the dub aired literally last season.
Look, I don't remember shit, Jet. Like, we're lucky that I remembered yesterday.
Okay, I mean, don't feel bad. I haven't actually watched it yet. I've just been keeping track for.
Yeah, I watched the first episode of it. This is a series that surprisingly, I guess, allows itself to have a comedy spin-off. Because, let's be real, I don't think Bungo Stray Dogs takes itself seriously 100% of the time.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, it's, like, we're obviously going to say, spoiler alerts, for the first, the whole series at this point. There's 3 seasons of it, and they're each, like, 12 episodes long, so it's only, like, 36 episodes. But, like, it's hard to believe that the first anime came out in 2016. In spring of 2016. And I believe it came out in the same season as My Hero and ReZero in that light.
I think so. Boy, that really was a long time ago.
Yeah, we're getting old, my dude. But, for those of you who have never seen Bungo Stray Dogs or heard of it, a brief synopsis of the whole story is that it focuses on a young man named Atsushi Nakajima, who has been kicked out of his orphanage. He accidentally stops the suicide of a man named Osamu Dazai, and because of Dazai, he learns that he has supernatural abilities, that of which turning him into a giant white tiger when the moon is out. Dazai essentially recruits him into what's called the Armed Detective Agency, a agency of other supernaturally gifted beings who kind of go out and solve crimes and stuff. They're rivaled by the Port Mafia, which is essentially the edgy version of the Armed Detective Agency, as you kind of come to learn. And it basically takes place in the Japanese city of Yokohama. The movie specifically, as of the Funimation Blu-ray DVD copy, provided by Funimation and Crunchyroll, goes, the fog is thick and full of shadows. After being enshrouded by a mysterious fog, ability users around the world begin committing suicide, or do they? In a race against time, the Armed Detective Agency must find the man behind the madness before it's too late. So Bungo Stray Dogs is known for its 2 quirks. 1, everybody is named after a fictional author, or something to do with a fictional author. The second quirk is that all of the abilities of the characters are in fact based off of the author's works and stuff. So Osamu Dazai is we'll get to all the powers, but essentially, imagine if, it's so weird to say that it came out the same season as My Hero. This is basically, this is kind of like My Hero for Fujos. As if My Hero for except for My Hero has a huge Fujo following.
Really, I don't know, at the time it kind of seemed more like and I know you're probably going to hate me for this, it seemed more like the spiritual successor to Black Butler.
It can't be the spiritual successor to Black Butler, there's not enough Shotas.
This is
There's
true.
Kenji, and he's barely in the series.
Okay, this is true, it just felt like it was going for, the similar audience of, beards and accents over Fujos.
Yeah, true. And I say that in the most loving way possible, because I am the exact brand of person that Bungo Stray Dogs is marketed to, and I believe that Studio Bones has realized that there is in no case in point trying to cater to men with this series based on this movie. That being said, this does run in Kadokawa Shoten in Japan, which I believe is their monthly shonen magazine or something. I don't know. It runs in one of their
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it just runs in one of their things. I don't know. Okay, specifically it runs in Young Ace. Specifically, it runs in Young Ace, which actually means that this is a seinen, not a shonen, which makes a lot more sense. Because this ran in the same thing as, the disappearance of Nagato Yuki, the Kill la Kill manga. It's, a lot of Concrete Revolutio, Drug and Drop, Erased, all that fun stuff. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the movie and its dub, which was provided by our good friends over at Studiopolis. This was one of the shows that when Crunchyroll and Funimation first announced their kind of partnership that would eventually die and fizzle out. This is a show that I think they had said that they were going to dub, and then it was sat on for a while, so no one knew if it was going to be from California or Texas, and then it came out and it was a California dub, and it was being helmed by Studiopolis, which has helmed the entire franchise so far, mostly under the direction of one Suzanne Goldish, and the particular adaptive writer for this, according to ANN, is Lucien Dodge. Suzanne Goldish you'll know as the director for series such as Boruto, Naruto Next Generations, Twin Star Exorcist, and Dino Girl Galco. Lucien Dodge did adaptive writing on series such as Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, as well as Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Mugen Train, Sailor Moon Stars, and some of Sword Art Online Alicization. So, Jet, how do you feel about the directing and writing of this dub?
Voice direction here was super solid. I've always really liked Suzanne's work on that end. Pretty much everything she's done has been really, really good. So this is more or less part of the chorus. Everyone here was pretty well casted. Was pretty well casted for the most part. And just speaking in general, I really kind of like how some of the key members of the cast here kind of get to do stuff a little out of their usual typecast of vocal register, and that's something I've kind of liked about the dub for the franchise. And script-wise, Lucian's dub script here is pretty good. Does a really good job of like sticking to material without being afraid to punch stuff up every now and then with some of the banter. Especially some of the stuff we got between Dazai and Chuya at the beginning of the movie was kind of fun. I kind of liked a lot of their back and forth. So, everything here on the technical front is really good.
And I have to agree, Bungo, to me, has been the strongest dub that Crunchyroll, I've always said, is the strongest dub that Crunchyroll ever paid for. With Mob probably coming in at a very close, but not quite their second.
I'm gonna say what I've seen of the ReZero dub was really good, so I would probably put that as a second, but yeah.
Yeah, there's something about the Bungo dub, especially, I think, that just excels in the case of its counterpoints. And that is, I think that the cast for this, they're not, something, and there are people who will argue with you that the ReZero dub is not very good. That they don't like the writing, they think the adaptive writing, especially for season 1, is just very atrocious compared to season 2. But for me, the thing that stands out about the Bungo dub is that while there is some there are people who are double casted, and in one case, one actress is, I think, actually triple cast in this movie. Everybody feels distinct from each other. No two characters sound a lot alike. The writing on this can be really fun. I think just in general about the franchise, based on, because I'm also a manga reader for the franchise, particularly you mentioned Chuya getting to have a lot of fun. I think Chuya is the author's favorite character. Like, everybody, like, the author's favorite character, the direction team at Bones, like, Chuya always gets to have, like, the most fun dialogue, I think, next to Dazai, in my opinion. Though there was one part where, like, he says, damn, and I'm like, I wish you could have said fuck. Like,
yeah.
I think it's when he's talking to Ongo, and he's like, I think at one point he calls him a dumbass, or head ass, or something. I think he tells him, like, Chuya will say, like, you have your head up your ass, he'll curse. I think a lot of, like, just the characters' personalities shine in not only the direction that they're given, but I think in Lucian's adaptive writing as well. Because this is a franchise with a lot of very quirky characters that are, I think, typical to action series like this, but at the same time, these are also characters that are a lot more, I think, morally gray in a lot of places, and very much quirky in a sense. Like, the way that Octagawa holds himself as a character and the way he speaks is a lot different from how Atashi carries himself. And it's different from, like, Tanizaki carrying himself, or Dr. Yoshino. It's such a fun dub to sit and listen to. especially as the series evolved, and we'll get to certain other actors as we come to them who really elevated their performances throughout the seasons, and then there were some that were like very spot on because from the start, because I believe you and Andrew have both said you prefer the dub to this over the sub, right?
Oh, so, yeah, like I watched the show when it was simulcasted way back when. I had kept up with it for a while, but I was like not really a fan of Mamoru Miyano and Dazai, so that kind of put me off to it for a while. So,
And I mean, I like the sub of the show. I think the sub of the show, if you had to sit and ask somebody to give you an all-star Seiyu cast, it's Bungo Stray Dogs. Bungo Stray Dogs has one of the most loaded sub casts in the world, I think. And as this dub goes on, the dub for this show has an amazingly star-studded cast, for better or for worse.
I think this does kind of highlight what I think tends to work about Studiopolis does really well when they like fire on all cylinders. Like they can be pretty good about getting a lot of like really high profile actors, and then compared to like maybe say what Bang Zoom does a lot of the time, where like okay, or like usually if you know like okay you have X say you can imagine like which voice actor might end up doing that kind of role because they have like a similar vocal register or whatnot. Mm-hmm. I feel like Studiopolis can sometimes get a little more creative with that, like with especially our lead here. Like this is definitely like he is definitely not the person you would imagine ever playing a more Miata character, but he does it really well. And I don't think you would have seen a similar thing had this been a Bang Zoom dub.
I would definitely say to me, I know we're not talking about this character because he's not in the movie, unfortunately, even though he is probably one of the most entertaining anime antagonists I've ever seen in my life. Chris Hackney as Fitzgerald is still one of my favorite performances out there. And this was the series that introduced me to Chris Hackney, who, as of the time of this recording, has delivered my favorite dub performance in anything, but it's in a video game. So, and if you know me, you know exactly what video game it is. That being said, let's move on to our first set of characters, because for one, when we did, the rest of us did the original series, these two characters were not revealed at the time. And two, let's just get this out of the way. There's a love triangle if you squint and you're into MLM ships between one of these characters and two of these other characters. But let's get this out of the way. They are Sennosuke Oda and Ongo Sakaguchi. Sennosuke Oda was a lower-ranking member of the Port Mafia, based on the author Sennosuke Oda, who was essentially never really wanted to be there. He wanted to retire and be an author himself. And if you watch the first 4 episodes of Season 2, you probably wondered, what the fuck is this dude doing here? Who the fuck is this asshole? And you later find out that he is the reason that Dazai left the Port Mafia. His ability was flawless, which allowed him to predict movement. And basically, if you want to see one of the coolest fights ever, just go to Season 2 and watch Oda fight the guy who runs Mimic. Ongo Sakaguchi was actually a member of the Special Task Force, who was basically a mole for the on the Port Mafia on behalf of the government. And he was one of the 3 friends that hung out with, Dazai after the bar at Bar Lupin. I could do a better explanation of this if I had the wiki up with me, but whatever. You've probably, at this point, I'm assuming you're watching this episode because you've watched the show, and that's going to do a better explanation than I ever have. But Ongo actually does have an ability, and it's called Discourse on Decadence. He can actually see people's memories if he touches them, but I just don't think it's been brought up in the show yet. Which is really weird, because knowing the plot of this movie, I still don't know how he didn't get caught up in the fog, but whatever, plot holes aside. Sennosuke Oda is played by David Vincent, and Ongo Sakaguchi is played by Michael Yurchak. David Vincent you'll know as characters such as Barbosa, and Magi, The Adventures of Sinbad, Memory Cell in Cells at Work, and everyone's favorite wine-drinking piece of shit, Gilgamesh in Fate Zero. Michael Jochak, you'll know his characters such as Obito in Naruto Shippuden, the older version, not the younger version.
Which one? I was about to say which version.
Shut up! We're not doing this again! We're not doing this 2 years in a row yet! Listen, he's the one that had the most credits next to his name between anime and video games, so congratulations, we found the true Obito. We're not doing this again.
Okay, I mean, at least he's not the really cursed one, so...
He's the slightly less cursed. He plays Hawkeye in Sailor Moon Super S and 10 Men Unomiya in Twin Star Exorcist. I feel like I just walked on and I just, said, I feel like I'm the Rev Up Those Friars guy. And, rev up those Obitos! Get out of here! Anyway, please go ahead.
Okay, so I can be pretty quick with these two. David Vincent as Sennosuke Oda. I liked him in general. I thought he was, really good in Season 2. He had, David Vincent is always really kind of very good at kind of gruff middle-aged dudes, so he was a good fit. And I definitely liked his arc there, but for the purposes of this movie, he doesn't really have a whole ton aside from, the original flashback where he told Dazai to join the detective agency, so I thought David's delivery was really good there, very heartfelt. I liked his dynamic with Dazai, so that was cool. Again, most of everything with his characters in Season 2, but, for the purposes of the movie, I thought he sounded fine. And then Michael Yurchik as Ongo. I like his voice. It is very, it is definitely very distinct compared to, a lot of, the usual kind of pretty boy voices you hear in anime. This sounds... I appreciate that his voice just sounds very... I don't want to say, bookwormish, but I guess it's very, okay, you can tell this guy is definitely a government suit. And he just has that very specific kind of tone to him, and I kind of like it. And I think it's kind of interesting watching him bounce off a lot of the other characters. So I thought his conflict with Chuya in the movie was, that was kind of interesting for when it was brought up, and I guess how he felt kind of conflicted about his role in, all of Chuya's pals getting killed, which was a thing.
Being Chuya Nakahara is suffering, by the by.
Yeah, this is true. But yeah, I thought his delivery there was kind of good. You can sort of feel a little bit of the guilt he had in Michael's tone. And I kind of liked how business-like he sounded, for the rest of it. And very much how he kind of tried to play it off as doing what he had to do, and I thought that Michael's delivery was really good there. So, yeah, on the whole, these two were very good. And they didn't really have a whole ton to do with this movie specifically, but I liked them a lot, and they were really good in Season 2.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I found out David Vincent was Otazaku in Season 2, and, I wasn't the most sold on him as everyone's favorite wine-drinking thought Gilgamesh at times. I will think of every funny... Oh, trust me, I cannot wait for the Babylonia episode where I will find every way to call Gil a slut.
I don't feel bad. I didn't like his Gilgamesh for a long time either.
Yeah, but he really got me as Otasaku, and honestly, let's be real, those first, 4 or 5-ish episodes of Season 2 Bungo are some of, the best acting in an anime dub I've heard. And it's a really good arc, and I will fight anybody who says, oh, this is a bad way to start Season 2. I could go on a dissertation about how that arc is actually really, 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 really important for the series, because it sets up the biggest through line that starts running through Bungo, which is, this is the reason I also love this series, is that a lot of Bungo is about, can people who have done awful things get redemption? And do they deserve it? And a lot of the times, characters have to confront that. And some of the characters are actively going through that arc, as we will talk about. And Sennosuke Oda is really the biggest character that kicks this off, and even in the movie, you can very much tell what his character is about, because the first thing you see him do is pick up and confront and comfort a crying child whose parents have just been killed. Meanwhile, this guy works for the Port fucking Mafia, the quote-unquote bad guys. I have to put it in air quotes because after season 1, it's debatable on if they are actually evil or not. They're basically they're the night mode of the Armed Detective Agency, and we can get into that later. But I've always really liked David Vincent's performance as Oda. It really does capture a lot of emotionality and heart in it, and you can also tell that, like, even in the little bits of this movie that are there, because they really did clip show his death into this movie, that you can tell that he does care about Dazai, and you can get that through David's performance. Ongo is always the character, Michael Yurchak's performance has always just been, like, he's the person I've always had a little bit of issue with. Not that it's a bad performance, but sometimes I'm like, is this your actual voice, or are you doing a really nerdy office guy voice? But the thing is that it works. Because Ongo very much is the government stiff type guy. Like, he's the dude in your group of friends who is clearly there to be the brains of the operation. Because, frankly, let's be real, Dazai has one mode, and that mode is chaos. And again, I think he does a great job in this movie. I really like when he does have his conversations with Chuya. Especially, he's like, and when he's talking about, the aftermath of the movie. Which, his subordinate's talking to him, and he basically, and the dialogue of the movie can be summed up in that moment as, none of us have any idea what happened. If you ask me to actually explain the plot of what's going on, we will be here for hours. And just the way that he speaks works in that scene, because the next shot is his assistant falling asleep to him talking about it. She falls asleep at her desk, and you can just kind of hear, like, I don't sound that boring, do I? But then again, Ongo looks like the anime version of one of the pixies from Fairly Odd Parents. You can't tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong.
So, there's that. Next up, every good armed detective agency and mafia need to have leaders. And frankly, they're here just because they kind of, out of all of the members of their unit, get a little bit more screen time and they are a bit more plot relevant for the final stakes of this. They are Yukichi Fukuzawa and Ogaimori. Yukichi Fukuzawa is the leader of the Armed Detective Agency, whose power is all men are equal. He essentially doesn't nullify powers, but he helps others with powers they can't control being able to control themselves. Ogaimori is the leader of the Port Mafia, and very true to his historical counterpart, who was an actual surgeon in the army. Ogaimori was once a doctor who basically killed and schemed his way up to the top. And his ability is Vita Sexualis, who, if you don't know, is actually the reason why that little girl follows him around all the time. She is his power. It is also very much an in-series joke that Ogaimori is a lolicon, and they dunk on him constantly for it.
As they should.
One of my favorite, like, actual moments in the series is, I need to get this character's name, because she's the other character besides Dr. Yoshino that I have a massive crush on. Ozaki, who's played by Cindy Robinson. Essentially, she is kind of like Kyoka's mom, but not her mom. She's actually Chuya's mom. She's canonically basically Chuya's mom in the Port Mafia, and at one point I think they talk about, like, Mori coming onto a girl, and she threatens to stab him for being a lolicon, and it's kind of great. But we're not talking about her. She's not in this movie at all, and that sucks. Playing Fukuzawa is Jameson Price, and playing Mori is Keith Silverstein. The second person to play in a Mori besides Mr. Christopher Waycamp. And if I had a nickel for every time I've had to explain that Osaimori and Osamu Dazai are not the same person, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Jameson Price you'll know as Ryder in Fate Zero, Duke Red in Metropolis, and just to drive the dagger into the heart that we will never get a Digimon series as good as Tamers ever again, Janyu Wong in Digimon Tamers. Keith Silverstein you'll know as characters such as N in Dorohedoro, Caster of Red / William Shakespeare in Fate Apocrypha, and Hisoka in Hunter x Hunter, because as of the day we're recording this is Gigi's birthday, and I'd be remiss not to officially talk about her best boy in 5 seconds.
I mean, it is appropriate when you brought up this board with a while ago.
Ogaimori and Hisoka shake hands, being perverts for small children and shown in battle situations. I know, I'm going to hell, and I'm taking you with me. Kyoka looks at Gon and goes and just mouths run.
Okay, so I can be pretty quick with these two, because again, for the purposes of the movie, they do have a decent amount of screen time, but aren't, like, super prominent. So in general, the boss man here, Fukuzawa, is kind of the kind of character Jameson Price excels at very well. He has like a very kind of authoritative tone to his voice in general, and he's always kind of good with those sort of characters, so he carries that really well here. He very much sounds like he's in charge. You can tell why everyone follows him. And there's just this natural confidence to his tone that just kind of makes him seem really cool whenever he's on screen. As I definitely did like his whole little dynamic with Mori when they briefly ran into each other and ended up switching partners for their fight. As I thought that the natural confidence he had throughout that whole scene was like really cool, and that was a lot of fun. And then Keith Silverstein as Mori. I mean, well, at this point you basically can't have a colleague of any kind without Keith Silverstein being in there somewhere. And this is definitely the kind of thing Keith Silverstein really excels at. He's very good at like hammy and theatrical villains, and that's kind of what Mori is to a T, so you can tell Keith Silverstein is having a lot of fun here. He sounds pretty dramatic over the top in everything he does. So again, that makes his like brief interactions with Fukuzawa here a lot of fun. And I did get like a little brief kick out of the bit where he's arguing with his own power, Gary carried it over there.
Oh yeah, Kara Karen, one of her like 3 characters I think she plays in this show. Yeah, because she's Elise. She's Ichio, the girl that is Octagawa's. She is Octagawa's subordinate. She's Ichio, and she's definitely Elise. I know that she's Elise, and Elise is such a fun character in the actual show, because I just need you to imagine that this 40-something-year-old man who literally is like an actual serial killer grade doctor gets his ass pulled around by a tiny girl. And it's just really funny.
And the dynamic is so kind of like very much here too. That where she's like, "Oh, how dare you do this to me?" And it was kind of amusing.
Okay, she's also the girl at the end of the movie that falls asleep to Ongo.
I
think she's also that character.
That definitely was scary. So when that character appeared on screen at first, I got confused and thought it was the girl who hangs around out to go all the time.
It's like, no.
And I was like, okay. Yeah, no, I was like, oh, wait, no, she doesn't have glasses.
Yeah, no. Also, technically, because the fog took in only people with abilities, she wouldn't have been taken in because Ichiya doesn't have powers.
That's true.
Yeah, she doesn't have powers, Gin doesn't have powers. Spoiler alert, technically Rampo doesn't. That's why he's literally got the safe and he sat there the whole time. That's why Rampo is Sir not featured in this movie.
Yeah.
Rampo doesn't.
Yeah, but yeah,
Rampo's power is just bullshitting.
That is true. But yeah, basically done. These two were very good. Jameson Price and Keith Super 2, they're basically always good at what they do.
Yeah, they get a lot of fun stuff in season 3, the two of them. They have the whole bullshit in season 3 with them. Keith, Jameson's the character. This is like a Jameson Price character. Like, you look at this man, you're like, yep, that's Jameson Price. I don't have a lot to technically say a ton about his performance, but it's like you said, he does very much command the room. He is very, very big. But to me, Keith Silverstein's Mori has always been, like, one of my favorite little performances in this show. Because it is so entertainingly slimy. Like, this dude is bad news, but he's so charming about it that you are like, you're awful, but you're fun. Like, I love when they fight back to back with each other, and they end up killing the other one's powers, and just the tone of his voice says, what a, like, the whole, like, what a brute who would slash a girl in half. And it's just like, you just pulled a gun out of your, like, sleeve, my dude. Don't act like you're innocent. And then there's the whole scene at the end with him and Chuya, where he's, like, sitting there with his wine going, yep, I had this plan the entire time, all according to Keikaku. So Kate's always just really fun as Mori. And I wish that Mori showed up more in the franchise, not because he's a good person, but because he's a fun character. And I think that Keith kind of chews the scenery with him when he's got him. Unless he's got to be, like, deadly serious, and then it turns on a hat, but there you go. So let's move on to the next set of kind of big characters in this. And I didn't know how to really place these two, because I wanted to talk about one of them, and then the other one's, like, kind of in the movie more, and is in the final fight. But I feel like, because they're part of the same group, I wanted to put them together. That being Doppo Kunikita and Kyoki Izumi. Kunikita is essentially, as Dazai says in the end of the movie, the mom of the armed detective agency. Much to Kunikita's anger. He is a very strict and principled man who lives life by his notebook. His power is Doppo Poet, which is he can make any item he wants, as long as it's smaller than his notebook. To which, I love this franchise and its power limiting so fucking much. Like, there's another character whose ability is he can make a bomb, but it has to be in the shape of a lemon.
Ah, that's great.
And of course, Dr. Yoshino, thou shalt not die. I can heal you, but I'm gonna have to half-kill you first. Which leads to a lot of really fun moments. Those two are not appearing in this movie. Okay, well, Yoshino is, but Bomb Guy is not. He's in the opening, and that's it. They don't even name him. Kyogen Izumi is a really interesting character in the franchise. She is a former member of the Port Mafia who is being controlled by Akutagawa, whose ability is Demon Snow to create... It's a giant, basically big ghost thing that slashes people, and is controlled by the cell phone on her neck. But as you kind of learn in this movie and as the series go on, that cell phone on her neck is more important than just controlling Demon Snow. Kunikita is played by Patrick Seitz, and Izumi is played by Jeremy Lee. Patrick Seitz doesn't need much of an introduction, but for those of you who don't know him, he is Pippin in the Berserk The Golden Age trilogy. He is Kairi Shishigo in Fate Apocrypha, and JP in Redline. Jeremy Lee, you'll know as characters such as Biyomon in the Digimon Adventure Tri-films, Dohan Hirasaka in K Missing Kings, and Makoto Nijima in Persona 5 The Animation.
Okay, so I can be pretty quick with Topo here since, again, he's not that prominent in the movie. I like Patrick Science Topo in general. It's a lot of fun. He generally sounds like he has to stick up his butt all the time, and Patrick just exudes that kind of energy really well. Where, like you were saying, he does very much sound like the mom of the group. Like he's very much trying to stay in charge of all these crazy children, but they just keep running off on their own, and he is clearly very frustrated and tired all the time. And Patrick really gets that across in his performance. Like even here in the movie, like in the beginning where he's trying to get everyone together for a meeting. And then Atsushi shows up without Dazai, and he wonders where Dazai is, and when he's like, oh, well, Dazai went off to, find another way to commit suicide again, and Dazai, and Dofo just loses his grip. So
He's just like, fuck this!
It's great. He's always a lot of fun, and then at the same time, he also, has even though he is very strict, he is also very protective of the other members, and you can see that here in the movie too. It's like where when everything goes bad in the beginning, his first thought is to make sure Atsushi and Kyoka get out okay, and I thought that was very sweet. But yeah, in general, Patrick Side Stopo is a lot of fun, and I definitely like a lot of material he gets in the show proper. Cherby Lee as Kyrika gets to do a lot of this movie, actually. In general, I've always thought it was kind of interesting that while this is, like, far from Cherby's first time playing a young girl, that for Kyrika specifically, she has, like, a kind of lisp she gives her to make her sound more childlike, and I thought it kind of did a lot to make her sound a little more distinct from some of Cherby's other roles, which is kind of neat. In general, I think she does a really good job of making Kyoka come off as very stoic and aloof, but at the same time, it's kind of clear she cares about the others, and especially Atsushi, and she doesn't want to look out for him. As an aside, I know that Atsushi's apartment is kind of small and all, but it is very messed up that he's sleeping in the closet while she took the entire room.
It's not that she put him in there. I think you put it in there because she is literally 14.
This is true.
Yeah, he's...
So, I mean...
Like, if you just kind of tune out to, like, the intro credits of the movie, and I've had this discussion with people before, it actually gives you all of their names. Atsushi is 18. And he's very much the type of guy who would stick himself in the closet so that the girl would feel like he would be that guy.
Yeah, he definitely would be. But and on a note, it also is extremely weird that she was the one driving.
I mean,
I guess this is one of the things where it's like, it's anime, you don't question it, but even so.
I mean, I think the justification is that she was an assassin. She used to be a hired assassin.
Okay, but even so, it's like, if he's 18, he probably has a driver's license. Why is he the one driving?
At that point, they were alone and in, like, a separate dimension. But I agree, why are we letting the 14-year-old drive the car? I mean, like, I feel like if Dopo had come, Dopo would have made her sit in the back seat. And he would have driven the car. But let's be real, as much as I love Atsushi, he's not very smart.
Nah, this is true.
Kyoka's, like, got enough self-preservation to know how to drive. Get in, I'm a trained driver. You're 14!
Trying to be serious for a second. I definitely did like how Jeremy handled Kyoko's conflict in the movie, like over how she feels about her powers and what they did to her mom. And you can tell that Jeremy showed that this is something that Kyoko has had to think about for a long time, and she definitely kind of sounds very meditative about that, and I thought that was very interesting. And the idea that he, like, ultimately doesn't resent her powers because he can use them to help others now felt like it tied in pretty well to the whole reason why she joined the agency in the first place, and I thought that Charity got that across pretty well. And I liked that she got to have, like, a pretty big role in the final battle. That was pretty neat. So, yeah, both of these two were very good. Charity especially got a lot to do here, and she was a lot of fun.
Definitely. I will say, I would definitely suggest that if you really liked Kyoka's character in this and haven't gotten around to season 3, episode 6 of season 3, which is episode 31 overall, does actually go into how her parents died. And it's just a really good episode, and Cherami's performance in it is top notch. Cherami also plays Kyoka's mom in that scene as well, because triple casting, which is a big thing about CR dubs, and I could spend days on that. But I think for me, the thing that really works about Cherami's performance is what you said, is that it does sound, she's played a lot of young teenage girls, but this sounds very young and very vulnerable. And I think a lot of it is that Kyoka's natural progression in the show is some of the best parts about it. She starts off as basically kind of not an emotional doll, but a very having to pend up her emotions because she sees herself as a monster because of what she's been forced to do. And I think that apprehension in her voice does travel through to what's going on now, because she's now got the chance to fight her own powers, and she's also got to confront with the fact that both Atashi and Octagawa have their own expectations of how she handles her as herself as a person. And I think that for a 14-year-old girl that's had to force herself to grow up too fast because she's been forced to kill and she's in this line of work at a young age, that Cherami has this level of restrained maturity to her voice, where it does sound a lot like a kid forced to grow up too fast. And when she does have that moment of Eureka, it is really good. That being said, I also like a lot of the little comedy moments they try with her, and this isn't a vocal one, this one goes to the animation team. There's a part at the end of the movie where Atashi, Dazai, and her are standing together after the final battle, and Dazai asks Atashi, does he think he's a virtuous person? Or, do I look like a person who's full of virtue? And Atashi, without hesitation, just says yes. And the look on Kyoka's face in the background is like, what the fuck, dude? Because Dazai is the least virtuous person on the planet. Patrick's Kunikita has always been really fun for me. I think when the cast list for this first dropped, for the franchise overall, Patrick being Kunikita was pretty much the most obvious casting choice. Like, that was like, yeah. But he nails it. He's a very uptight, virtuous dude with a stick up his ass at the age of 23. And he's trying his best, but listen, if you had to deal with Dazai on a day-to-day basis, you'd pull out your hair too. And I think that he does capture the very, like, on-the-nose, businessy aspect of having to be Doppo Kunikita. But he also gets this very dry sense of humor across, because one of the best lines in the entirety of the movie, let alone the franchise, is that he talks about how his power can make a weapon, but it's nothing that has to be smaller than a notebook. So he smacks a part on the wall, and it flips to reveal a full artillery of guns. And Atashi just goes, where did we even get all that? And with the straightest voice just goes, well, we are the Armed Detective Agency. And he hands him a pistol, and and they leave. So I genuinely have always liked Patrick in this franchise. So let's move over to the main villains of the movie. One, Mr. Fyodor Dostoevsky and Tatsuhiko Shibusawa. Tatsuhiko Shibusawa is a man with a power called Draconia, which enables him to create a mist around and eventually cause the gifted to kill themselves, quote-unquote, but he's making his powers go against him. You come to find out that the Tatsuhiko Shibusawa that they are fighting is actually the remains of his power living on, as his physical body has died. And he died chasing a power that could surpass all other powers, that being Atashi's power. Dostoevsky is the definition of, and then there's this asshole. Dostoevsky's power is crime and punishment. What does it do? We don't know. It won't. The series refuses to explain how it works, other than it kills people. He is the leader of a group called the House of the Dead. And he is essentially the end. There's this asshole of the franchise. It's really hard to explain what Dostoevsky's motivation is, because I don't think the series doesn't want to.
Yeah, at this point, it's just like, okay, he's our main bad guy, that's kind of all you really need to know.
Yeah, he's just here to have a good time. And by have a good time, I mean inflict pain on others.
Yeah, in general, I was very surprised he showed up in this movie at all, but it's like, of course he's here.
Yeah, this is his first introduction, technically, in the anime. This is his introduction, because this movie takes place between Seasons 2 and Season 3. So, playing Tatsuhiko Subasawa is Xander Mobus, and playing Fyodor Dostoevsky is Ray Chase. Xander Mobus shall know his characters such as Romani Ackerman in Fate Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front Babylonia, Fallon in Sirius the Jaeger, and Juzo Shima in Blue Exorcist Kyoto Saga. Ray Chase shall know as the subway announcer from Persona 5. The Lancer of Black in Fate Apocrypha, everyone's favorite anime mob, Bruno Bucciarati in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind, and Hank in To Abandon the Sacred Beasts. Because, frankly, like Crunchyroll, we all need to be reminded that exists and got a dub.
I mean, yep, I watched that show. It was pretty alright.
Yeah, that was one of the first shows when Crunchyroll really started to dub on their own that they did for some reason.
Yeah, that show in general was kind of weird. It was like, hey, what if X-Men took place during the Civil War?
If you thought the X-Men were persecuted in the modern day...
Yeah, I'll never get over the fact that the main character that was named Hank, and he's just like, his transformation literally looks like Beast.
It does.
Someone knew what they were doing there.
I was just like,
Yeah. Okay, so I could be pretty quick with Fyodor here. It's like, this was a pretty interesting role with Ray Chase. I mean, he's had his fair share of villain roles before, and he's pretty good at them. This is definitely the only one of his I've heard with a Russian accent, but to his credit, he does the Russian accent pretty well. It's not... I mean, it is obviously, a cartoony Russian accent, but it's not... Okay, but it's not so over the top that it's, like, super distracting, and it definitely doesn't take away from his performance in any way, so I think it works.
So fun fact about that. We interviewed him at Anime NYC in 2019, and there's a showing our own video. So I asked him about that, and apparently they had actually recorded him not doing the accent. And then one with him doing it, and they chose the one with him doing it.
Yeah, I think that probably was a smart choice. I mean, it could definitely work without the accent, but I think it definitely is like a little bit more fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
But for the purposes of this movie, I did like how much, he was just kind of like scheming and weaving in the background. And he was a lot of fun. It definitely was kind of hard to get a read on exactly what his goal here was, and I don't think we ever really quite knew. I guess he was just kind of here to stir up things because that's basically all he ever does. But Ray Chase definitely sounded like he was having a lot of fun here, and he did a good job of making Fyodor here sound, very delightfully twisted and mysterious throughout the whole thing. Okay, and I sort of, I both appreciate and kind of hate the fact that, like, they reference the fact that, his power never betrayed him because, like, reasons. Something about, like, crime and punishment are the same, so, like, his powers would never betray him. It's like, okay, sure, whatever. It's like, insert the Giovanna meme here.
I, Giorno Giovanna, have a dream.
It's not even that one. It's Bull, but I believe it.
Ha! Fair. Fair. Yeah, literally, like, I genuinely enjoy that this movie lampshades how bullshit it is in the ending credits. Where Ongo's like, it could take weeks to discover what the fuck all this was about. Like, shut up and enjoy the pretty action scenes, you dumbass. It's basically the plot of this movie.
And then Xander Mobus as Shibusawa. He had like a pretty decent air of mystery to him, and I thought Xander got that across pretty well in his performance. Xander in general is pretty good at these kinds of villain roles, so this is a pretty solid casting choice. The whole thing with him being bored with the world because everyone and everything seems predictable isn't all that interesting of a motivation, but I thought that Xander did a pretty good job of making him sound like he thought he was above it all and kind of detached from everyone else. And I thought that made like his whole dynamic with Dazai here pretty interesting, where he thought that even Dazai was predictable, but it's Dazai. Of course, you can't predict Dazai. I mean, in general, he felt a little boring for what was basically a Shonen Jump movie antagonist, but at the same time, it's a Shonen Jump movie antagonist. They're usually not that interesting anyway. But I mean, the whole twist of him having tortured Natsuki as a kid was probably the most shocking swerve in the movie. Well, that and the whole thing with him being dead all along, those were the two things that kind of got my attention with this character, but otherwise, he was just kind of like, hey, here's our villain for the movie, and Xander did a pretty good job with him. He was perfectly fine. And, in general, these two were very solid performances.
Yeah, for me, definitely. I think that Rei's Dazai... Sorry, Rei's not Dazai. You said nobody can predict Dazai, and all I'm thinking is the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia wild card, bitches! Rei's Dostoevsky, which I'm never going to be able to pronounce his first name, just get off my dick, Russian fans. To me...
I don't know, it feels like they always pronounce it
Fyodor. I think it's just more fun to call him Dostoevsky, because it's just more fun to say. Dostoevsky! I think the thing that I like about him is that he is such a smarmy asshole while having the Russian accent. And I definitely agree that they should have kept the accent, because here's the thing. All of the Japanese characters are not speaking without an accent, and all the American characters aren't speaking without an accent. But all the other Europeans have an accent. Because technically Agatha Christie does threaten to burn down Yokohama.
Oh yeah, she was here for 10 seconds.
Hey Agatha, you'll be plot relevant in the manga one day. Also, hi Erica Lindbeck's third character. Yeah, that's Erica Lindbeck as just Ongo, ring ring. Hello, this is the British. We're going to scorch earth everything. Fix your Russian problem. I think Rei's Dostoevsky's also one of the most charmingly fun performances in the whole franchise. I think that he has this level of wit and cunning in his voice with the right amount of slimy asshole who... He's the manipulate mansplain of the trilogy, of the triangle. Because at one point, him and his own power are like, we are crime and punishment. So, I've always really liked Rei's Dostoevsky. I think he's a ton of fun. Xander as Shibusawa is really weird, because Xander Mobus's range is terrifying. Xander Mobus's range scares me, because I don't think at the time I had heard this for the first time I'd ever heard Xander Mobius go that deep. Also, B, I was mostly really unfamiliar with him, because the only thing I knew him as was the grunting, mumbling Persona 5 protagonist and the Smash... Is he the Smash menu announcer, too?
Yes, he is.
Okay, that's what I knew him as.
Settle it and smash is him.
Yeah. Settle it and smash / master hand, all that fun junk. So I think he was pretty good in this. Is Shibusawa kind of a nothing villain? Yeah. He only kind of really exists to further Atsushi's character development. Okay. I do think he's overshadowed by some of the other performances in this, but it's no way a bad performance. When he sounds threatening, he has to be threatening. This movie does have somebody turning into a dragon actually be cool for fucking once. But that's all I really have to say about him. Alright, let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this episode. Let's talk about everyone's favorite couple of exes. Chuya Nakahara and Osamu Dazai. Chuya Nakahara is one of the Port Mafia's generals. He is a short, angry little bitch, whose power is upon the tainted sorrow, which lets him manipulate gravity. He also has a corrupted form, which lets him do it more at the cost of not being able to stop himself. The only thing that can stop him besides death? Osamu Dazai, whose power is no longer human, the ability to nullify all other powers. Osamu Dazai is essentially a smarmy wild card with a dark path, whose essentially character arc can be defined as, can a murderous, pretentious asshole find redemption? And the answer is probably. But in all seriousness, Osamu Dazai is actually genuinely one of the most captivating characters in the series, let alone the franchise, and his mystery and motivations and just wildcard nature make him some of the most fun to watch. Chuya Nakahara is played by Nicholas Roy, and Osamu Dazai is played by Keiji Tang. Nicholas Roy, you'll know his characters such as Masato Sanada in High School Prodigies Have It Easy in Another World, Hearts in Tower of God, and Yamato Matt Ishida in Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna. Keiji Tang, you'll know his characters such as Archer in Fate Unlimited Blade Works, Oma Tokita and Kengen Ashura, and of course, Dazai's white-haired cousin, Satoru Gojo in Jujutsu Kaisen.
AKA the teacher everyone is horny for.
Hot for Teacher by Van Halen has a new target. Like, let's be real. Gojo and Dazai look at each other, give the finger guns, and go off to troll their student.
This is very true.
Like, if I didn't put Satoru Gojo in characters that Keiji Tang has played, I was just like, people are gonna say something in the comments. Like, you're going to say something to me.
I mean, he is clearly having a lot of fun with that character.
I think between Satoru and Dazai, they are the two most fun that Keiji has with people.
Okay, so getting into this, starting with Nicholas Roy's Chuya. So for me, the first thing I ever heard Nicholas Roy in general was as Mikey in Digimon Fusion.
I was gonna put that too, and then I was like, oh, let me bring up the better Digimon.
So I mean, okay, I mean Fusion is pretty good, and I mean, it is okay. I mean, it is kind of ironic where he was casted in Last Evolution, all things considered. But we won't get into that here.
You can't hear it. I just shrugged. I was just like, eh.
Okay. I mean, if you know why, you know why. But anyway. But anyway, since the first thing I had ever heard him in was Mikey in Digimon Fusion, the fact that Chuya sounds like a deeper and raspier version of him always kind of made me wonder what would happen if this is what would happen if Mikey grew up to join the Mafia, which is a very odd thought, but yeah. But in general, I think he does a really good job of making Chuya sound very grumpy and angry about basically everything, but mostly having to put up with Dazai all the time. And he has some great chemistry with Dazai's actor, and he really bounces off pretty well with a lot of their banter. Especially at the beginning of the movie, they used to have a lot of fun interactions. And I thought his whole conflict with Sakaguchi was again kind of interesting. Since I forgot those two weren't actually acquaintances, for some reason I misremembered things and thought they interacted in the flashbacks, but they didn't really. Since they weren't, while it was only based on status quo, was obviously going to prevail here because again, this is basically just a shonen jump movie. I thought there was a pretty good amount of tension as to whether or not Chuya was going to take revenge for his friends, and I thought the Neko did a pretty good job of making a lot of Chuya's seeming frustration feel pretty believable, and in general, he's just very good at making Chuya sound like a very angry boy. It's good. And KJ Tag as Osamu Dazai. So, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I was not really a big fan of Mamoru Miyata's performance in Japanese. He just sounded like a little too cartoony to me, and it kind of got a grating after a while, so I kind of prefer KJ Tang's take a lot more. I think it does a really good job switching between Dazai's very outwardly playful and whimsical attitude, and then all the deviousness he has hiding beneath the surface. The whole is Dazai going to betray the agency thing felt like a kind of lame excuse and sideline for most of the plot. Considering that again, this has all these things to be non-canon turns-up movie, so status quo is obviously going to prevail here. But I did appreciate that the idea of him going through a whole bunch of weird hoops to enact his own plan felt very in character. Right, that's right down to the idea that he somehow planned for Chuya punching him in order to give him the pill that would save his life. It's that is definitely a very Dazai thing.
Dazai is several steps ahead, even though you don't want him to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but I definitely appreciate that Kate did a very good job of making it clear that Dazai was scheming something even if we didn't know the full scope of Zen's scheme until the last minute. It was a lot of fun. And like I said before, he had some really great back and forth with Chuya throughout the movie, and he and Nicholas Roy bounce off each other really well. They're fun.
So for me, I think that Nicholas Roy has always been the unsung hero of the Bungo Stray Dogs dub, because this was the first anime I ever heard him in. His performance as Chuya has always been delightfully entertaining and just very dramatic and on point, because, let's face it, Chuya Nakahara runs not on food, water, photosynthesis. He runs on spite. He is the most spiteful little asshole, to the point where one of my favorite interactions of the entire franchise is in season 2, right before Chuya has to fight Cthulhu. Yes, that is a thing that happened. Is that he and Dazai are walking up to the fight, and Chuya goes, "The night that you left the Port Mafia, I opened up my vintage wine and celebrated." And that's their entire dynamic. Spiteful exes. Because face it, Chuya is also Dazai's sloppy seconds.
This is true.
So, Nicholas's performance has the right level of absolute earnest, absolute spite, and absolute balls to the wall showman screaming. Because the corrupted form screeches like a banshee. And it's great. And for me, Keiji Tang's Dazai is just one of my favorite performances in all of anime. It is the right level of funny, comedic timing, smarmy, but also just very genuine when it needs to be. Because Dazai is just genuine when he needs to be, but in a lot of times he's also somebody that works in mystery because he is an enigmatic person who 100% doesn't even know if he deserves the kindness that he gets. And I know a lot of people, if you've seen the series and got turned off by it, he does make a lot of suicide jokes, but that is because in reality, the real Osamu Dazai did kill himself. Dazai, to me, works in this movie because not only is he funny, he's also trying to play every side, and he's got, 7 spaces in chess figured out ahead of you. And I really love the idea that him and Chuya have the most straightforward conversation about Dazai being Snow White. Because he bit the poison apple, and then he got his wake-up kiss by getting a punch to the face.
Ah, it was really beautiful.
True love. And then there's the scene right after where the Bones animators had them having a serious conversation about having to lie low and let the true final fighters come in, as Chuya's face is at Dazai's crotch level. Thank you, Studio Bones. But overall, I really do think that if for any reason you've never checked out the Bungo Stray Dogs stuff, these two are the actors I would definitely say you need to check it out for. Because their performances are some of the most interesting throughout the show, and especially Keiji's Dazai. Keiji's Dazai gets to kind of run the entire gambit of emotions, and you get to see him do it in this movie, but the series gets time to... The actual series proper gets to amplify that because it takes its time doing so. Obviously, in a movie, you can have him run all these emotions, but it's still going to be in 90 minutes. So speaking of that, let's get to our final 2 characters, who are our main character and his main rival. We have one Mr. Ryunosuke Akutagawa and one Mr. Atsushi Nakajima. Ryunosuke Akutagawa is a general of the Port Mafia who is known to be a vicious killer. In truth, he got his start at the Port Mafia because when he was a child whose friends had been attacked and killed by the Port Mafia, it was Dazai who opened his hand and took him in, and basically abused him into the monster that he became. His power is Rashomon, the ability to take a shadow-like ability, put it in his cloak, and slash and hack and all that fun junk. Atsushi Nakajima is our overall main character of Bungo Stray Dogs. He is a skittish, kind of neurotic 18-year-old guy who's been thrown out of the orphanage for allegedly being a nuisance, when in all truth they threw him out because he would become a vicious tiger that would destroy their crops at night outside of his control. After being taken in by the Armed Detective Agency, he is kind of on the path to becoming not only a stronger person, but a better person, and his ability is again Beast Beneath the Moonlight, which lets him turn into a giant tiger / shapeshift, and also gives him a healing ability. The overall actual reason for why he's important to the plot is that he can bring them to the magical MacGuffin of Bungo, but I don't believe that's actually been discussed in the series proper yet, so I don't want to say what it is. Playing Ryunosuke Akutagawa is Brian Beacock, and playing Atsushi Nakajima is Max Middleman. Brian Beacock, you will know his characters such as Takato Matsuki in Digimon Tamers, Renzo Shima in Blue Exorcist, and Toby in Children of the Whales. Max Middleman, you'll know his characters such as Shiro Kotomine in Fate Apocrypha, Ritsu Kageyama in Mob Psycho 100, and Kosei Aruma in Your Lie in April.
Okay, so Brian Beacock as Akutagawa. As someone who forever associates Brian Beacock with Takata from Digimon, hearing him as Akutagawa really took me for a loop when that casting announcement first came out. And I thought that putting him here was a very bold casting choice, but it's one that definitely worked. While his Akutagawa isn't as growly as Kensho Ono's, I definitely like that there's this very constant sense of smugness to him that also works really well for the character. That sounds like he's just perpetually prickly about basically everything, and it's very delightful. I will say that for how much screen time he actually has in this movie, he doesn't get a lot of really deep material, but the idea of him confidently taking down his own ability does feel very much in character for him. And I thought that Brian got across that confidence really, really well. And it made his whole fight with Rashomon really fun. So I definitely got a pretty good kick out of that. And I thought that all of his interactions with Atachi were pretty good, and how he was kind of like indirectly trying to motivate him in his own way, and that felt very much a character, and I thought that Brian got that across pretty well. And then Maximum and Atsushi. In general, Atsushi is a very good boy who kind of needs to stop getting dunked on constantly, and Max does a very good job of making him sound like a very nice boy who's just constantly dealing with a lot of trauma and just doing his best to put up with it. I just really like the way he handles that. I was kind of doing it first when I felt like they were going to bring up the whole orphanage thing again, since that whole sequence in general always kind of felt a little too over the top even the first time I ever encountered the show. Is that even by Shonen anime standards, that whole sequence is always like pretty over the top. But it tied in pretty well with how honestly he feels about his powers and whether or not he even wanted them back at the beginning of the movie. So I thought I thought they made that callback work well enough. But in general, the whole reveal that he basically killed the villain of the movie in self-defense once was definitely a pretty shocking twist given how good natured Natsuki generally is. And again, given that this is basically a Shonen Jump movie, I am definitely very surprised that this is where you drop the ball that, oh hey, our protagonist killed someone once. With his self-defense, but he didn't do it. But I thought that Max's delivery definitely did a very good job of kind of selling how dramatic that moment was for Atsushi, and it was definitely very heart-wrenching, and I really just wanted to give that poor kid a hug in that moment, so...
Can we please just stop? Can we please just stop torturing this little bitch?
But yeah, I thought Max's delivery was really good there. And I definitely thought that the whole scene where he finally comes to terms with his powers were pretty good. And I thought that Max did a real good job of just kind of getting across how mixed Atsushi's feelings were in that moment. And at the same time, how determined he was to keep trying to help others despite how mixed he feels. And I thought that Max got both aspects of that across really, really well. And in general, I think Max's performance as Atsushi is very good. It is very much kind of at the heart and soul of the show, and I think that Max does a really good job here as the lead. And in general, both of these performances are really great.
Definitely. I've always really liked... Brian Beacock was never the first choice I had for Akutagawa. I don't think I had him on my radar as anybody who was ever going to play Ryunosuke Akutagawa in my life. And I remember when the trailers first dropped for Bungo, everybody was like, oh god, here we go. He sounds awful. And then I watched and was like, no, this is fucking great. He carries Akutagawa with the level of smarm and asshole of a man who thinks he's hot shit, but he's not. Cause Akutagawa's kind of a dork. Like, not in like the traditional sense. I mean like in the sense that Akutagawa and Atashi are two children fighting for daddy's attention, and it's clear which one dad likes better. And it's not Akutagawa. Akutagawa is a man-child. Pure and simple. He is a murderous little man-child. Because he never had an adult who believed in him in the best way possible. And that comes across in the way that he holds himself. He believes that he is better than Atashi because Atashi's a crying little baby who won't do what it needs to be done to win. If it means killing somebody, Akutagawa is gonna do it for approval. And that's why I think it's really funny that it is really a good point that you bring up that he's the first person to get his power back. Because he's like, fuck it, I'll do it live. I also would like to point out that he is injected into the movie not by walking up to them, but because he gets yeeted into Tachi and Kyoka.
That was great.
It's just like, oh god, what are you doing here? And he's just like, oh, well, it's you fuckers. And there's always this way where he very much tries to bring out the worst in people by the way he talks. And I really like that about Brian's performance, is that he has this kind of way that it's very clear that he holds himself in high esteem, but it's probably because he's compensating. And then Max's Atashi is just, yes, he screams and cries a lot, but it's because he doesn't know how to process trauma. And I think the only complaint I had in this movie about Max's performance is I really do wish they would have gotten an actress to play younger Atashi. Because Max was kind of pushing it a little to me.
Yeah, that is kind of like a weird. I know that's kind of a thing when I think I remember hearing that Suzanne Golden specifically just like prefers. Just kind of prefers male voice actors doing young boy voices for like whatever.
I just think that it would have worked a little bit better, especially when he has to scream the way he does because he's being electrocuted.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Like, Atashi has a reason for crying. It's that he's been tortured his whole fucking life. And Max gets that across very well. And I think the thing that really Max excels at with his Atashi is those moments of emotional revelation. Is that he is very much, he gets what's at Atashi's heart. And at Atashi's heart is a good person who has been abused for most of his life, fighting to do good and being a stronger person because of it. And in this movie, he gets to do that also while beating the living shit out of a man. And it's great! Overall, Max is, like you said, he is the heart of this dub, and if that heart wasn't beating correctly, I don't think this dub succeeds as well as it does. So with that, let's just kind of wrap everything up.
In general, Bungo Stray Dogs is a pretty fun franchise. It took me a little while to really get into it because when I watched the original simulcast, I thought the show was fine, but again, I wasn't super big on Mamoru Miyano's Dazai. And I kind of thought the show had a little bit of a problem with its tone. But the dub definitely kind of improved my opinion of the show considerably. It's a lot of fun. I like a lot of the actors here. They gave some really solid performances, and that extends even here to the movie. It's a really strong dub. Definitely one of, if not the best Crunchyroll has put out with Studiopolis. So if you haven't seen Bungo dubbed yet, you definitely should. It's great.
Yeah, I am always a proponent of more people watching the Bungo Stray Dogs franchise. It's a weird, funky little action show that I think a lot of people forget exists until a new season of it comes back and everyone's like, oh great, this show is fucking awesome. It's a weird show. It's at its heart has a little bit of a rough first season, but once you kind of get to the meat of what I think the show's going for, it's a really fun ride. It's got a lot of fun powers, and its dub is honestly one of the best that are out there. I think it's an instant classic of the late 2000s, the late 2010s. It's by far the best dub that Crunchyroll has paid for. I just wish that they actually acknowledged that it existed. But that is kind of the burden that this has, being a Crunchyroll dub. Crunchyroll forgets, I think, Bungo even exists as a franchise half the time. And unfortunately, its dub kind of lingers out in the fact that until you bring the show up, people are like, oh yeah, that dub's really good, or oh yeah, that show's really great. And for everybody asking, oh, it's been 7 years, it's not that popular still, motherfuckers, have you ever seen how much goddamn merch gets made for this series?
I mean, it's still getting a ton of spin-offs, and I guarantee when we have enough material, there will be a 4th season.
Yeah. At this point, I think the reason they haven't made a 4th season is because they're still in another really big arc, and it's a monthly manga. I'm only up to I only own up to what's out in English, but I can't tell where it starts and where it ends because I'm missing 2 volumes because it's been out of print due to COVID. But like the both of us said, if you're watching this episode, I'm pretty sure you like Bungo Stray Dogs as it is. Just please tell your friends. It's a lot of fun. This stuff is great. This movie is a lot of fun. It is as dumb as, I say this in the nicest way, it is dumb as fuck. But you'll have a good time. And if you'd like to have a good time, you can watch the dub of this movie as well as the subtitle, if sub is your choice, on both Funimation and Crunchyroll. You can also pick up a DVD Blu-ray copy from Funimation and any of the retailers, Amazon, Right Stuff, eBay, your local store if they have it. Target has this a lot for some reason online. And if you're interested in continuing the story of Bungo Stray Dogs, because there has not been a 4th season, you can pick up the manga and the light novels, as well as the spin-offs from Yen Press. That being said, if you'd like to follow us, we are the Dub Talk Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, where we obviously put this up. We also have the audio version on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. I think, are we on Spotify?
Yeah, we are.
And, I believe Streamily is the other one. If you'd like to support us as a one-time donation, we do have a Ko-fi link below. But if you'd like to support us on the regular, you can become one of our lovely Patreons. Our lovely Patreons are, at the $5 tier, Michelle Travis, Miracula Corazon, Nika Robin, but with yaoi hands, Sue Tweedy, Victor Mayborda, and my parents. I get to say my parents because it's literally labeled as Megan's mom and dad. Our $10 tier is Brandon Best, Carly Lesticow, Crimson Echidna, Jacob Wilson, J2 aka Jared, Julia W, Marissa Lenti, and Otaku Anthony. Jet, where can the good people find you?
You can find me on the Twitters at Divine Dega, where we'll usually be talking about anime or cartoons or politics or something like that. You can also find me on my blog, Anime Infinity, where I will sometimes write things if I feel like it. And you can also hear me on another Podcast O&A, where I'll usually be talking about anime news with fellow Dub Talk host Andrew.
And then if you'd like to follow me, I can be found at QueenAir2 on Twitter. I mostly shitpost, but you can also hang out with me on a couple of Discords if you know where to look. Sometimes I show up on Podcast O&A, but that's usually to poke fun at Crunchyroll. But other than that, I believe we are done. So, Jet, you are free.
I'm free, dang it.
until I drag you into Fujo hell again. That being said, everybody have a great night, have a fantastic rest of your summer, and otaku on, my friends.